Decadent and decaying, beset with tragedy, mystery, and intrigue, New Orleans has long been regarded as one of the most haunted cities in America. In 3 centuries, floods, fires, plagues, and war, all in turn, have made their mark, and today, the dead outnumber the living almost 12 to 1. Lives cut short by calamity fill the narrow streets and crooked buildings. Racked by death, disease, and destruction, this is a fertile breeding ground for hauntings of all descriptions. And when darkness descends, the spirits come to life. Ghosts, spirits, and vampires do not care if you believe in them or not, because it only takes one encounter to change a person's perception of reality. People have not only reported hearing sounds and feeling uncomfortable, but also being physically attacked. Among these spirits are Civil War soldiers, tortured slaves, and even murdered mafia hitmen. No one is safe from the supernatural here. We are about to embark on a journey through the dark streets and horrid history of the quarter. What happens from this point on will either be a charming memory or the stuff of your nightmares for years to come. Welcome to New Orleans. The Andrew Jackson Hotel wasn't always a hotel. In the 1700s, it was a Catholic boarding school for boys, and in the 1788 Good Friday fire, some of the students perished in the inferno. The location is said to be haunted ever since by 5 mischievous boys, to be exact. These boys are said to be intent more on disruption and merriment than frightening the guests, but they have managed to give a few guests a good scare. Imagine sleeping in your bed in the middle of the night and the toilet flushes or the faucets come on, or watching TV and the channels change or the volume goes up and down. Many times, guests have called down to the front desk to complain about children laughing and being loud in the hallways, when in fact, no children were staying at the hotel at the time. Among more disturbing reports, a woman staying at the hotel woke up in the middle of the night to find 5 boys sitting at the end of her bed watching TV. By the time she was able to scream, the boys just disappeared into thin air. Another guest decided to put on a sheet, go out to her room's gallery, and imitate her best ghost to tourists down below. When she returned to her room and took off the sheet, she found 5 boys standing there with stone-cold faces, applauding her performance. There was also a young couple that stayed in the hotel hoping for a paranormal experience. They were very disappointed when they didn't get one, but when they got home, they looked through their photos and found one of themselves sleeping in bed, taken from the ceiling's angle. These may not be the most terrifying ghost encounters told, but they will still make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Jackson Square is named after President Andrew Jackson, whose statue stands in the middle of the park. It is said to be one of the most haunted areas in the city. Everything from slaves, pirates, aristocrats, and nuns are said to haunt the square and the surrounding buildings. Standing in the center of the square, just by the statue, sometimes you can hear the ghost of an 18th century Catholic priest named Pierre Dagobert singing Gregorian chants from one of the cathedral towers. The square was originally used by Spanish military as a staging ground for public executions. In 1811, 3 slaves from the German Coast Uprising were hung there, their heads displayed on the city gates. If you're taking pictures, you may be able to capture orbs or flashing lights, but you will not be able to capture one of the most disturbing ghosts in the square. She doesn't have a name. She is simply called the Nun. She usually passes through the square at night, fumbling with her rosary. She is see-through and wispy and floats more than walks. When people see her, they usually start fumbling for her camera, but by then she is gone, like she knows what they are trying to do and she doesn't want her picture taken. As far as I know, only one person was able to capture her image, a man named Bob Hardy. About 30 years ago, he was visiting with his wife and 2 children. They were taking pictures in the park. He lined them up in front of the statue with the cathedral in the background. Back then, they didn't have phones or digital cameras. You had to wait to see the pictures when you got them developed. And when he did get them developed and saw the pictures, what he noticed was very disturbing. There was a nun figure standing next to his wife. It only showed up in a couple of the pictures, and in the first one, it was just in the background. In the second one, the nun was standing right up next to his wife, looking at her with these white eyes. The pictures were odd, but Bob didn't think much of it at the time. He wasn't a superstitious man. But over the next couple weeks, strange things started happening. The crucifix that they placed over their fireplace kept ending up on Bob and his wife's bed. They all started having night terrors, and the boys took to sleeping in their parents' bed. All their night terrors were the same: an old woman dressed as a nun standing in the corner of their room, just staring at them, praying the Hail Mary over and over again. But then she would stop. She would look at them with her white eyes, raise her bony index finger, and scream, "Repent! Repent! Repent!" Eventually, it became too much for Bob's wife, and repent she did. She admitted to having an affair, and in a psychotic break, she burned the photo album of their trip to New Orleans. She left and never returned, and with her went the spirit of the nun. They never had an encounter after that day. But if you're feeling guilty about something, I wouldn't suggest taking photos, just in case. The Old Ursuline isn't your typical haunted location. Here, we are dealing with the legends of vampires. The convent's construction was finished in 1754, which makes it one of the oldest buildings in the Mississippi Valley. This building has seen many amazing things, including 2 devastating fires that almost destroyed New Orleans. But things didn't get really interesting until the French sent girls to the convent to find suitable husbands. When they arrived, they were carrying chests, and these chests looked like caskets. From then on, they were known as the Casket Girls. Unfortunately, the Casket Girls were treated very badly by the inhabitants of the city. Unfortunately, the Casket Girls were treated very badly by the locals in the city and were eventually sent back to France, but they left their caskets behind. Thinking they were empty, the nuns placed them on the 3rd floor. Later, when a nun went upstairs, she noticed that the caskets were open and so were the shutters. Rumors spread quickly that the girls actually brought European vampires here and that they hunted the foggy streets of New Orleans at night. It was stated that the caskets were sealed shut by nails blessed by the Pope, but that didn't even help. Stories persisted until modern-day ghost hunters came to check them out. They weren't permitted to go upstairs, so they camped out here by the gates. Later that night, they heard a noise and noticed the shutters flying open, and flying out of the shutters were shadowy figures. These shadowy figures turned into pale men with fiery eyes. But that was the last thing they saw. They woke up the next morning and they looked like they got attacked by an animal. They had scratches all over them and they were drained of blood. A few years later, another ghost hunter came to check out the stories. He camped on the street in view of the window. And late that night, he also heard a noise and noticed that the shutters opened. This time, the shadows were surrounding him and a nun chased them away. She yelled at the shadows, "This is not the one you want." The next day, he asked about nuns being in the convent and was told that there haven't been any for many years, so it would appear he was saved by a ghost. Whether this place has ghosts, vampires, or both, this is definitely not a place you want to visit after dark.